Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome to the post-draft edition of NoDQ&A video right here on NoDQ.com, as well as the YouTube channel and NoDQ&A videos affiliate, ringsidenews.com. Make sure you check out my draft review video with Jeff Meacham, as well as our predictions for WWE Battleground, which is this coming Sunday. NoDQ.com has got you covered. Very busy week in the world of WWE. NoDQ.com has a ton of different articles up regarding the draft as well as Battleground. Make sure you stay tuned to the site for the very latest details. Now that that's all out of the way, let's get down to your questions, and I got a lot of them. This one comes from Grant, first one today. Who were you most disappointed about not getting drafted? I'm just surprised that we did not see any major names or even moderate names from the past coming back to be drafted when there was all this talk and all this speculation. Now, maybe we will see some of those former stars coming back at some point. To me, that was really the biggest disappointment of the draft. I wouldn't say any particular person. I just feel that for this draft, WWE should have had a few surprises. That's my opinion. Other than that, I can't say I was really disappointed about anybody not being drafted. This one comes from Last Man Sitting. Are you surprised that there were no former talents returning last night considering all the rumors? Absolutely, because I think for SmackDown, it would have meant something to have a surprise return, bring back one or two former stars to really add credibility to the draft and make it a little bit more unpredictable and create that atmosphere for SmackDown that if you miss a show, you might miss something important. You never know who might show up. I think that that would have been a good approach to get people hooked into watching SmackDown on a weekly basis. SmackDown did a huge rating. In my opinion, it beat expectations. SmackDown actually had slightly more viewers than Raw, but it's all about maintaining that viewership and keeping those people watching week after week. I think bringing back one or two former stars would have gotten people more invested in watching on a weekly basis and would create that idea in people's heads that anything can happen. Got this one from Gareth Smith. After the draft, can you see some trades happening? I saw Cesaro seem disappointed being on Raw when he should be on SmackDown. That is an interesting concept to bring up. WWE in the past did do the trades. Every now and then we'd see somebody traded from one roster to another. And I could see something like that happening again. I mean, it depends on how well Cesaro does and what kind of storylines he's involved in. And if for some reason there's a better opportunity for him on the other brand, then you can do a trade. So I would absolutely consider doing the trades, but not overdo it. If you do a trade one or two every 6 months, I think that's fine. But if you start seeing guys traded every couple of weeks, then it's really going to water down that concept and just water down the brand extension as a whole. Got this one here from Devin. What did you think of Cesaro's interview after being drafted? Pretty interesting to me. Hopefully he can talk more like that. When I saw that on the WWE Network, I mean, first thing I thought was he's just going into business for himself and he's saying how he really feels. And apparently that was a shoot. That was him just speaking from the heart and not going off a script. I think that Cesaro could really benefit from a storyline here. They could do something with this and really give him a renewed push, and maybe with the CM Punk effect, he can get more over than he was in the past, and maybe he could become a top star on Raw. Who knows? But I would definitely follow up on this and, you know, push the guy and do something interesting with his character and let him be the internet favorite. Let him go out there and just say what everyone else is thinking. I mean, that worked for CM Punk. It's worked for a lot of guys. Daniel Bryan. Let Cesaro be the poster boy for the internet fans and let him go out there and rip into the drama on Raw and say, you know, this show should be about the athletes and the competitors. Why not? Why not do something with this and see where it goes? So I'm hopeful it will lead to something bigger. Now, I think the worst thing that could happen is that he's just there. He's just a guy on the roster. There's no follow-up to this, and, you know, it's just business as usual. This one comes from Nikki. Hey Aaron, why wasn't Bayley drafted, and do you think it's a good idea to split up the club? You're doing a great job. The Bayley thing is interesting. I mean, there's still a possibility she could show up on Sunday as the mystery partner, and if that's the case, then that would explain why she wasn't drafted. Now, if she does not appear at the pay-per-view, then that will definitely get some people wondering, what is WWE thinking here? You know, in the storyline, why would Shane or Stephanie pick people like Eva Marie instead of Bayley for the draft? That was never really explained, and we all know the real reason, of course, that WWE wants to have some top stars remain in NXT since NXT is a touring brand. I believe Bayley is supposed to be heading to the main roster soon, though. So, you know, if she doesn't appear at Battleground, I could see her debuting in the next couple of months. But, you know, at the same time, WWE needs to be able to build up new women in NXT to replace the people that left. So that's also a priority, and WWE may want to keep Bayley around there for a few more months and have her work with some of the new women coming in and establish them and put them over. Now, regarding the club, I think that it would be bad for AJ if AJ is going to remain a heel. Now, if AJ is going back to being a babyface soon, which may not be the case since SmackDown really needs a top heel and AJ fits that bill. It's weird, though. I mean, maybe AJ could form a new faction. Maybe AJ can just be a successful heel on his own. We'll have to wait and see how that plays out. I think it's going to hurt Anderson and Gallows more unless WWE does something with Finn Balor, or maybe Anderson and Gallows go for the tag team titles. So hopefully there's a good plan for Anderson and Gallows. I think AJ will be fine one way or another. I do feel it could be bad for Anderson and Gallows if WWE doesn't have, you know, a really good storyline for those guys. This one comes from R.I.P. Mitch. With Sasha denying that Bayley will be her partner, do you think that Trish Stratus will return at Battleground? Trish is a name that I brought up when I was doing the Battleground predictions video with Jeff. You know, it could be Trish, could be Lita, maybe another former diva could make a surprise return, Mickie James. I mean, there's a lot of different possible names for this, or it could just end up being one of the divas that have been out of action. I mean, there's been speculation about Nikki Bella, although she's just heading to the Performance Center now to start training, so it would really surprise me if she was the partner. It could end up being Nia Jax, could end up being somebody else. I mean, there's a lot of different possibilities as to who it will be. And of course, it could be Bayley, so who knows? This one comes from Nathan Hawks. What do you think about the Raw plans on doing with the Cruiserweight division, since there's no Cruiserweights on the roster at the moment? At the moment, but things are expected to change. There are several names that are expected to be part of the Cruiserweight division, people that were part of the Cruiserweight Classic, and there's a list on NoDQ.com you can check out. A lot of different names are expected to be part of that division. And, you know, maybe WWE will bring back a few names from the past as well. And, you know, they'll make it work. They'll bring in some guys. Maybe some guys will not be full-time roster members. Maybe some will. Yeah, right now there are no Cruiserweights really. But I'm sure that will change very shortly. This one comes from Ash. Do you think that they will play up on the storylines of superstars coming up from NXT by having each brand trying to get them to sign? I like that idea. I like that idea of somebody like Samoa Joe becoming a free agent and both sides try to win him over. I would definitely consider doing that with Joe and maybe even with Nakamura when the time comes to bring him up. I would love to see that happen. I think that would be a very effective way to bring up NXT talent, have each side bid for the services of that competitor, and you can make a storyline out of that. why not? I think it's better than just randomly bringing up people. At least for the top guys like Joe, I think WWE should do that. This one comes from Gingy. Why wouldn't they move all women to SmackDown? Raw gets the Cruiserweight division. What are the women in SmackDown fighting for now that the title is on Raw? I'm assuming that Charlotte or whoever the women's champion is will defend against challengers on both brands, similar to how things were when the brand extension first started. But right now, everything's a big question mark. I mean, it hasn't really been made clear what the rules are and if the women's champion is going to be exclusive to Raw or if the women's champion will defend on both shows. Same thing with the tag team titles. It's not really made clear how that is going to work. I think for the tag team division, you need tag teams on both rosters so you can have tag teams on the brand exclusive live events. I mean, it would be weird if you had a bunch of brand exclusive events where there were no tag teams or tag teams just thrown together. So I think you need to have tag teams on both brands and have the tag team champions defend on both brands, or have two sets of tag team titles, which I'm not really a fan of. I'm not a fan of WWE adding more championships at this point. And same thing with the women's title. I'm not really a fan of another women's title being introduced. I think you should just keep it at one. So I think the best thing to do is just have the women's champion take on challengers from both shows. This one comes from Amish John 1897. Do you think with Balor going to Raw and Gallows and Anderson staying on Raw that they will now form the Balor Club? That's definitely a possibility, although WWE recently let the Balor Club trademark expire. I think that Finn Balor is better off being a babyface at this point, and based off of him getting a top draft pick number, I'm expecting big things. I'm expecting him to be pushed as a major star, and I think that he should be a babyface with his character and his look and his entrance. I think it would definitely be too soon to turn him heel. I think it's more likely, I talked about Anderson and Gallows earlier. I think it's more likely that they just compete for the tag team titles and they challenge New Day and maybe even beat New Day for the tag team titles. And with Balor, you can push him towards the top and have him feud with one of the top heels in WWE, whether it's Kevin Owens or Seth Rollins, put him right at the top. I think that's the best way to go. There's always the possibility that Finn Balor will show up at Battleground and align himself with Anderson and Gallows, and maybe Anderson and Gallows turn on AJ. I talked about this with Jeff when we did the predictions video. We'll see what happens. This one comes from @JHCamper. Hi Aaron, what are your thoughts on splitting up the Wyatt family over two brands? It's interesting, and maybe there'll be a trade. They could do a storyline where Bray demands that Strowman is brought to SmackDown, and that forces a trade between Raw and SmackDown. You could have Bray Wyatt intimidate Shane and Daniel Bryan and do a storyline there. I mean, if WWE writers were creative, they could come up with something interesting. I really do not have high hopes for Braun Strowman by himself on Raw. I think that he will fade very fast without Bray Wyatt. And I also think it's better to have the Wyatt family actually break apart and have a storyline feuding against each other rather than them just randomly going their separate ways. Have Braun Strowman be drafted back to SmackDown, or not back to, but have him traded to SmackDown and then do a breakup storyline. And I think you get more mileage out of Strowman and Rowan. I think that's what's best for them. I think Bray Wyatt will do fine regardless of the Wyatt family group being together or not. But, they could do that storyline where Rowan and Strowman turn on Bray, and then that gives Strowman and Rowan some time. It gives them a storyline and gives them something to do for a while to feud with Bray Wyatt. This one comes from Iper. Was the WWE draft WWE's way of putting Stephanie under a good light to be liked by the fans? I'm not sure what the hell they're doing with Stephanie. It seems one week she was acting like a babyface, and then the next week she was back to being a heel. And with Mick Foley as the GM, he's a babyface, so Stephanie's going to be the heel. That's the dynamic. Although, I think in the end, the idea is to position Stephanie as this really powerful boss who is going to eventually take over the company once Vince is gone. And, you know, they want to make Stephanie look really strong, whether she's a heel or a face. So I think that's the overall goal in the end, to make Stephanie look like this successful boss who's just as capable as her father of running a successful business. I sense that will be the long-term direction with Stephanie. But from week to week, who knows what direction WWE's going with her. All right, got a few more here. This one comes from Jared J. Smith. Hey Aaron, what are some matches you wish WCW had done that never happened? Number one match for me would have been Goldberg versus Hogan on pay-per-view to follow up the Georgia Dome. When they did the finger poke of doom, one would have thought that Goldberg was going to eventually get the title back and work his way through the NWO Wolfpack and get to Hulk Hogan. Of course, that match never happened. Ric Flair was the guy who faced Hogan, and then there was the double turn, and then it really went nowhere with Goldberg. Goldberg was just there in WCW, and the company never really followed up on that storyline with the NWO and Goldberg. The other match is Bret Hart versus Hulk Hogan. That was a match that Bret wanted. He came back and said he wanted to fight Hulk Hogan after the death of Owen Hart. And again, there was no real follow-up. Bret was a babyface, Hogan was a babyface, Russo came in, and then Hogan disappeared, and we never really got that match. And then Bret got hurt by Goldberg, and then I remember the angle where Bret Hart hit Hogan with the chair, the April 10th, 2000 Nitro, and then there was no follow-up because Bret was hurt and could not wrestle. So that was one match that we never got to see. I'm sure politics played a role in it, but it's unfortunate. That would have been a huge box office match if it had been done and if it had been built up and executed, excellently executed for that matter. When Bret first came into WCW, I mean, that was a money match if they had gone through with it, but they didn't, and they no longer exist. Got this one here from Vince Fears No DQ. If WWE does a best of Kurt Angle DVD, do you think that they will include matches with Benoit considering they were some of his best? It would not surprise me if WWE tries to avoid having any Benoit matches on the Kurt Angle DVD. The Royal Rumble 2003 match is really a must. I mean, that was one of Kurt Angle's best matches, one of Chris Benoit's best matches. That was an excellent match that elevated both guys, and even Chris Benoit in defeat got elevated from that performance. Alright, that'll wrap it up for this edition of NoDQ&A video. Thanks as always for watching. Make sure you stay tuned to NoDQ.com for the very latest. Subscribe at youtube.com/AaronRiftNoDQ. Also check out my personal YouTube account at youtube.com/AaronRift. And on that note, I will see you guys next time for more NoDQ&A video.